Welcome to the Coherent Leadership podcast. This is the final episode in the series for ethical founders. I was going to do 7, but now I'm doing 5. So I can't say every single episode is the most important episode. However, this is one of the most important episodes, along with episode 4, because it speaks directly to a major problem that we have in this specific time that we're living in, particularly around work, and that is that people are being expected to take personal responsibility for systemic failures. And it's something that I feel really passionate about, because you can't just keep telling people they need to be more resilient. Like, oh, a bit burnt out, are we? Maybe we should look at the system that is causing people to burn out. Anyway, let's try and make this coherent because that is my brand. Welcome to this final episode. Which is the final shift to circular leadership, and it also gives some clues as to why you should adopt this now, sooner rather than later. Having examined quite a few of the operational traps that conscious business people face as they scale, today we're going to pull all those threads together to focus on the foundation that holds your entire enterprise together, which is your leadership architecture. Lots of ethical founders are that way because they care very deeply. So they set out to either build something or steward something. They might take on something that has already been built differently. So they're either going to build or steward differently from the extractive business models that they see everywhere around them. You want a business built on integrity and on human thriving and on sustainable momentum. I see you. So do I. Yet, the standard business advice says you've got to take those human-centered values and somehow pack them inside this rigid pyramid shape that came from the industrial age. What? So the industrial pyramid was designed over a century ago for top-down enforcement, and it's not just industrial, it's military as well. So mechanical repetition, rapid human turnover, and also just people being used as cogs in a machine. It was never built to hold a regenerative mission, which is what we're doing. So when you attempt to run a conscious company inside an extractive structure, the most intense operational friction develops. You can't help it. And mostly it manifests as massive exhaustion. That's probably the CEO or somebody at a similar position, misaligned teams, and just a continuous energetic drain. So transitioning to a circular leadership framework is an immediate operational necessity, because it's only going to get worse if you're sticking inside the pyramid. So something about conscious founders is they normally have really high empathy, which is a beautiful trait. You offer generous flexibility, You hold space for personal challenges. You rely on informal alignment, personal relationships. Like, you know how to do the human stuff. It's easy for you. And in the beginning, that kind of feels like a good enough and very authentic alternative to corporate coldness. However, informal goodwill has a hard, measurable limit. As the business grows, it gets more complex, and if you rely on unstructured empathy, it starts to create not only systemic confusion, but a natural capacity restriction in other people. So you've heard the phrase killing with kindness. I feel like this is sort of it, you know. You start something because you think you're being kind, you think you're being really flexible, really agreeable, and actually it's not good for the people. Because without explicit operational mechanics, care just turns into a manual high energy exercise. Believe me when I tell you, I have been there. So you find yourself personally cushioning every operational shock, every bit of cross communication, and every broken workflow. And you do it. You do it because it's easy for you. However, at scale, it's not easy. It's a massive personal effort. Because empathy without architecture is completely unsustainable. When I talk about sustainable business, I'm not just talking about being green. I'm talking about having a working business model that works for all the people involved. A circular system transforms this dynamic by engineering care directly into your daily operations. And here we're coming to the part that I opened with. So instead of relying on the founder to manually sense and resolve the tensions, for them to just clock like, oh, I don't think that's going very well. Care is actually built into the system. So explicit feedback rhythms, precise accountability loops, and clear boundaries. This is the part that makes a difference, with shared responsibility, because everybody is trained to have these skills. So this means the structure itself holds the culture. The system ensures that every team member knows their realm of ownership, they know how their work impacts the whole, and they know where to route operational issues. When you replace informal goodwill with circular architecture, you stop acting as the single emotional shock absorber for the entire organization. And if you've ever been on holiday and come back to absolute chaos, you will know exactly what I'm talking about. Because rather than expecting individuals to shoulder a systemic problem, this is what happens in a lot of ethical companies. You do it. You do it for them. However, what if you didn't have to? What if you created a self-sustaining environment where team members actually thrive on operational clarity rather than personal oversight, and where we stop expecting people to just be more resilient instead of getting burnt out. And that includes you, the listener. That includes you as the boss, as the CEO. Anyway, if you think about the standard design of an organisation, the classic corporate pyramid concentrates every line of authority and relational tension directly upwards towards the top. In this layout, wisdom and decision-making authority are assumed to exist exclusively at the apex, pretty much, while execution remains at the base of the pyramid. When an ethical founder operates inside this model, a severe contradiction develops. So you want your team to take genuine ownership, you want collaboration and real-time responsiveness, but every piece of information and every approval must travel up a vertical chain and all the way back down again. And guess what? This creates massive operational drag. So yeah, of course, it slows things down. Important decisions sit in queues waiting for your final review. More critically, the pyramid structure concentrates all of the risk directly at a single point. You become the sole point of failure. No wonder it's stressful. When all the strategic weight and operational accountability sit on your shoulders, executive burnout becomes inevitable. You become the primary bottleneck to the scale and health of your vision. Oh my God. Yep. What if circular leadership was to completely redesign the structural physics of your organisation? I know it feels like massive overwhelm, just like, I don't know how we're going to do this. That's where I come in. You don't have to do it on your own. So instead of a vertical hierarchy, authority is organised across dynamic interconnected circles. Information flows horizontally through real-time feedback channels, and teams operate with autonomy inside clearly defined strategic parameters. When operational friction occurs inside a circular system, the network actually self-corrects at the exact place where the issue lives. Now, that's really hard to imagine if you're used to a pyramid framework, which we all are. Decisions are made where the information exists rather than being passed right up to the top and all the way back down. Momentum then can remain continuous, and the single point of vulnerability at the apex completely disappears. Every month that you delay this structural shift, you will pay for it in operational confusion and personal exhaustion. That's not meant to sound like a threat. That just is what it is. When leadership architecture is weak, you do get a cost. And the longer you leave it, the more dangerous it becomes. And you will notice it as well. You'll notice it in how long things take. And this kind of operational paralysis, which is not a people problem. I think this is the whole thing that I'm so passionate about, is that none of this is a people problem. It's all an architecture problem. It's all a systems problem. So when people don't need to ask permission to solve problems within their remit, but they just execute, document, and inform the relevant people, this starts to speed things up massively, which means you scale faster and more healthily. We have entered an era in this time in history where everybody looks past external marketing messages. So that includes clients, consumers, and talent who maybe wants to work with you. They evaluate how an organisation actually operates on the inside. So they pay attention to the texture of the workplace rather than just what people say they stand for. Because when you operate an extractive model of internal systems while championing holistic principles, it just creates such cognitive dissonance, which ends up in culture fatigue, amongst other things. So when an ethical brand preaches balance and sustainability to the market while running its own team into the ground or personally sacrificing amidst structural chaos, the mismatch is so obvious. It's like, you're not walking your talk. How can I believe you? So that internal friction erodes brand equity as well. And high caliber talent demands operational integrity. And you could name that something else. You could say high quality humans with elite capability demands operational integrity. These kind of people want to work within systems that reflect holistic principles in daily practice. They want clarity, they want psychological safety, and they want meaningful ownership over their work. And ethical founders want this for their people. Circular leadership delivers undeniable internal integrity. It aligns your operational mechanics with your values. It builds a pristine environment where authority is clear, contribution is visible and gets rewarded, work flows without unnecessary friction. It basically positions you and your enterprise as a mature leader in your space. Delaying this evolution risks leaving your brand structurally outdated, as well as all the human cost for yourself and the people who work with and for you. So, your strategic vision and your creative energy represent the most critical assets in your business. Circular leadership is one way of protecting them. This transition represents a fundamental realignment of how power, information, and energy move through your company. The future belongs to founders who build architectures capable of sustaining both their mission and their personal capacity, and that of those people who work for them. You don't need to wait. That is my sincere statement to you. You don't have to wait. Next quarter, next revenue milestone, whatever you want to call it, you don't have to wait. Why don't you book in a triage call with me and we can talk about how this might apply specifically to your company? Make sure to read the show notes so that you know where to go.